Welcome, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today for another Rockjumper Dream Destination webinar. Today, we are traveling to the incredible country of Uganda. This is a virtual safari we are greatly looking forward to, not only because of the magnificent bird diversity, but because Uganda is also home to many incredible mammals as well. Keith and I love engaging with you, so please send us your questions, comments, or say hi via the Q&A or chat at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavor to answer as many as we can during or at the end of this webinar. Joining us today is one of Rockjumper's legendary guides, David Hoddinott, who has been proudly leading tours for Rockjumper since 2002. David is well known in the birding circles for his endless energy and legendary bird spotting skills. And there are few guides on the planet that know Africa as well as David does. His many trips and adventures across the continent have seen him rack up the exceptional number of species in the process, and there is nobody on the planet who has seen more birds in Africa than David, with his total sitting at an extraordinary 2,161 different species, including many of Africa's most prized and little-known avian gems. It really is an astonishing achievement, and one that David has devoted much time and energy towards, which also speaks volumes for his passion for birds on the continent. To boot, David has seen over 6,000 birds around the world.
Thanks so much for joining me. I'm really looking forward to sharing this virtual tour through Uganda with all of you. It's certainly my favorite destination in Africa. And I'd like to just start off by saying why Uganda. And there's a number of reasons. I've been asked by many guests, if you were to choose one country in Africa, what would it be? And so I thought about it, and I tried to look at it a holistic view. So it's an English-speaking friendly nation, has good infrastructure, including accommodation, roads, and communication, good food, great climate, an average altitude of 1,000 meters, roughly 3,000 feet. So it really gets too hot. Fantastic birds, over 1,000 species. The official list now stands at 1,062 species, quite incredible for its small size. It also has incredible wildlife, including mountain gorillas, chimpanzees, 13 species of primates, tree climbing lions, and a number of larger mammals like hippopotamus, giraffe, African elephant, African buffalo, and many more species of mammals. It also offers two incredible boat trips, one on the Nile and another on the Kazinga Channel, and great photographic opportunities. So now on to the country itself. Here's a map of Uganda, and it's a small country, I say, like the size of the United Kingdom, or a little bit smaller than the state of Arizona. And it's bordered to the north, as you can see, by South Sudan, here to the east by Kenya, to the south largely by this incredible Lake Victoria, the second largest freshwater lake in the world, Tanzania, then to the southwest, Rwanda, and up on the west, the Democratic Republic of Congo. So the capital is fairly central here and close to Lake Victoria, Kampala, and there's roughly a population of about 40 million people in Uganda, so quite a significant population for its small size. It's also crossed by the equator, not shown here on the map, but the equator crosses through the south of the country, and it's very fertile and rich. You can stick something in the ground, it'll probably grow. So it's a very fertile land. So onto the birds, and I'm going to run through a basic itinerary for you to give you an idea of what the tour is like itself. And then starting on the first day, we go in search of the great Shoebill. Now, the magnificent Shoebill is quite unique. Nothing quite like it. It's in a monotypic family all by itself, and is one of the iconic birds of the whole continent. And Uganda is undoubtedly the best place to see it. So on our very first day, we venture along the shores of Lake Victoria to a few swamps, and we go out on little motorized canoes in search of this amazing bird, which stands sort of waist high. It's really impressive. And occasionally you'll see them flying like this, but that bill and that head just dominate the bird. And they feed on lungfish, so a large part of the day they will stand like this, just eyeing the water carefully for the slightest movement in search of their prey. Then on to other birds of the Mabamba swamp, the great yellow-billed duck. There's also some wonderful flowers, floating vegetation, lilies, and papyrus itself. It's quite a trip going through these swamps. If we're lucky, we see lesser jacana. Here's a shot I managed to get of the African jacana chasing a lesser jacana. You can see how the lesser jacana is really dwarfed as the white trailing edge to the wing, which is a prominent feature if you see the bird in flight. When it lands, it's not much bigger than a sparrow. It's a really small bird, but the Mabamba swamp is a good place to see it. That's one of our targets there. Then we continue through, and if we're lucky, this is a rare weaver called Wayne's weaver. And you can see the lovely chestnut flanks with this black head and striking yellow iris. Also very localized around Mabamba Swamp and Mabira Forest. One of the targets over the next couple of days. And then we head to the great Mabira Forest, which is en route to Ginger. And that forest has a wonderful selection of forest birds, including this blue-shouldered robin-chat, which can be rather secretive, but sometimes they hop out like this one did and perch right out, showing very well. Beautiful bird. Also some skulkers in the understory, yellow-eyed bristlebill. And this bird is unusual. It follows a bit like some of the ant swarms in South America. The ant birds follow the ants, and as the ants forage and spread out, they flush insects out of the leaf litter. And then these birds in turn catch small insects that fly out. And so this yellow-eyed bristlebill does that. Then on to Tarokos, magnificent, I think 6 species of Taroko there, including this one, the largest, the great blue Taroko. Also a wonderful selection of primates, as I mentioned earlier. And this grey-cheeked mangabe is a good place to see it, is Mabira Forest. So we have a full day in Mabira to enjoy the specials there. And then we'll continue. So if I can show you here on the map, just on the northern shore of Lake Victoria's Entebbe, where one lands. And then we bird the swamps here for the Shoebill. Then we continue east to Ginger, where the source of the Nile is, on the great Nile here. And then bird Mabira Forest here. If we have time that afternoon, we usually spend an hour or so late afternoon here before moving into Ginger for the night. And then the next day, a full day in this fabulous forest. And then we start to continue north. So straight north here past Luwero Swamp, where we look for a special Hartlib's Marsh Woodbird, it's quite localized, and then continue north to Masindi for a 2-night stay in a lovely old colonial style hotel that's been refurbished. And we pass through Kampala, the capital of Uganda, and as you can see, a thriving metropolis, often quite gridlocked. But once we leave the city, the roads start to open up. And in the countryside, you might see folks transporting the staple diets. These are plantains, and they make an interesting dish called matoke, which is sort of crushed up plantain. They cook it. It's not a banana. It stays green like this, but looks very like a banana. And it's crushed up and the consistency of sort of mashed potato. And but it doesn't have a great deal of flavor, so they add all sorts of spices to it. But this is how the local people, the farmers, transport it. Simple way to get to their villages. Very clever of how much they can carry on a bicycle. But yeah, in the north, you often see this on the roadside. So then from Masindi, our base, we in the north here, we will go to the Great Royal Mile, which is close to Masindi, not shown here on the map, but in the general area just northeast of Masindi. And this is what it looks like. Stunning forest, absolutely incredible. And a very easy flat walking trail, as you can see, through the forest. It's about a mile long. It's called the Royal Mile because old chiefs in the area used to meet here, and it got the reputation as being where the chiefs met, the royal family. And so, yeah, named the Royal Mile. And the birding is absolutely spectacular, in particular for kingfishers. You also see huge buttress root trees, a bit like you do in South America as well. And then if we're lucky, we may even start to see chimps here. We do chimp trekking, and I'll get to that a little bit later, in the Kibali Forest. But even on the Royal Mile, occasionally we see chimpanzee. And here you see a mother with a little baby. Sometimes even grouping right alongside the main track. And here's a happy chappy. Found a nice fruit. So yeah, the chimps are around, but not always seen at the Royal Mile, but certainly through the trip, we have an excellent chance of seeing them at some point. And I mentioned the kingfishers. This is African dwarf kingfisher. Beautiful little tiny bird, smaller than your hand, but magnificent, little jewel of the forest. They feed mostly on insects. Same with the blue-breasted, feed on larger insects in the leaf litter. Stunning bird along the Royal Mile, very good chances to see that. And the tricky one, which is in the canopy, this is chocolate-backed kingfisher. So all three species you can usually find on a morning along the Royal Mile. Then another special of the area is white-thighed hornbill. This giant of a bird up in the canopy, you often hear them flapping overhead. You can hear the heavy wing beats as they fly over the forest. Beautiful large bird, and feeds mostly on the big fruiting figs. Then our largest eagle in Africa, the great crowned eagle. Fantastic bird, and because of the diversity of monkeys, especially in the Royal Mile, there are usually crowned eagles around. Sometimes they perch like this one near the roadside, or you hear them calling as they display over the forest, flying high overhead. African grey parrot. The grey parrot sadly has been extensively captured for the wild bird trade. So in the old days, 50 years ago, you could see, you know, flocks of 20, 30 flying over the forest. Now today, you're lucky if you see 2 or 3. But usually during the trip, we should see a few sightings, but sadly not many anymore. But a lovely bird, fantastic. And then Narina trogon. It's a good place on the Royal Mile to see that. Only 3 species of trogon in Africa. The Narina, the other 2 bar-tailed, also occurs in Uganda. And then bare-cheeked is a West African bird. So this beautiful bird, we have a chance in several sites, the Royal Mile, maybe even Mabira Forest, and a little bit later around Bahoma. Then lovely bee-eaters as well, another fantastic African family. This is the black bee-eater. See, you just caught a butterfly. Another shot of them. They really are spectacular. And around the edge of the Royal Mile is a good place to see it. Also, other opportunities on the trip, and I think on over 50 tours that we've done to Uganda now, we've seen it on every trip. It really is a gem. Then this funny little guy, he's a small seed eater, the grey-headed oliveback, and he feeds mostly on the edge of the forest on small grass seed. Here he's collecting nesting material. Quite a tricky species, but again, this is a good tour to see this bird. And then back to the understory birds, the fire-crested alethi and brown-chested alethi, both dwelling in the understory, secretive and elusive, but Uganda is a good place to see them. Another stunning bird, red-bellied paradise flycatcher, and often along the Royal Mile we'll see this bird. Green-headed sunbird, Sunbirds are another fantastic family and well represented in Uganda. This is the lovely male with the all green head. And then black-bellied seed cracker, another seed eater, rather shy this one and elusive, but our strike rate's pretty good. We're usually fairly successful in seeing this bird on the tours in Uganda. Absolutely stunning with that red head and striking white crescents around the eye, big jet black bill. This cute little fellow, checkered elephant shoe, is really hard to see, but on recent tours we've been seeing it near the Royal Mile. There's a site, Kanyopabidi, we visit, and sometimes on the trails we see this little fellow, so cute. But they're actually quite large. You can't see the scale here, but bigger than your hand. It's quite a big elephant shoe. And then back to the monkeys, along the Royal Mile, we may see blue monkey. Also this beautiful Gariza colobus, often in family groups like this, hairy with a long tail. Here's a close-up shot. And then the red-tailed monkey. You can see that striking russet tail, and he's got this wonderful little white spot on his nose. And they often travel in quite large family groups, sometimes 30 or 40 in a group. Here's another one. Nice close-up shot of his nose. And they often leap across the canopy from tree to tree. These groups move quite quickly, but the monkeys are all rather confiding. They're well protected in the reserves, and we've got a good chance to see all these monkeys on the tour. Then there's also a striking array of other critters about, and you may well see some tree frogs. That's absolutely spectacular. That comes in all shapes and colors. This red forest glider, quite regular on the Royal Mile, absolutely exquisite. This yellow pansy, really beautiful. And the diversity of butterflies is amazing. Some of the forests have over 200 species just in Budongo Forest, where the Royal Mile is. More diversity here. You can see several species coming down. And then there's also some diurnal moths, also exquisite with this iridescent blue sheen and the orange and red pattern. Then, so back to Masindi from the Royal Mile, we travel back past the Butiaba escarpment and back to Masindi for a day before traveling north to Murchison. Murchison is up here around the Victoria Nile. And here's the Great Murchison Falls. So after leaving the Budongo Forest and the Royal Mile, we come up to Murchison, which is a lovely savanna park. So out of the rainforest into savanna. And we start that afternoon by visiting the falls, which is quite spectacular. So the whole of the Nile is going through about a 9-meter gap here. So it's an incredible force of water. Different angles here you can see from the top looking down. Another shot from the bottom. Yeah, it's an amazing place to visit. Absolutely incredible force of water. And around the falls, we often see rock pratincoles. They breed on the rocks, little islands of rock. And here you can see a youngster with some parents of rock pratincole. And then we do a wonderful boat trip on the Nile. There's a ferry that takes us across the Nile, and from this point we'll do a boat trip down to the Lake Albert Delta, where you actually have more chances to see shoebill, but huge numbers of other birds. And also incredible mammals. So African elephant, quite often along the banks of the Nile. Hippopotamus, huge pods. Some trips we see about 300 hippo on that boat trip. It's absolutely incredible. Every probably 300 or 400 meters, you come across a pod of hippos. And here you can see a pod with abdomen stalks in the background. This is lovely waterbuck, also often and regular along the shores. The male here has some females. And then Uganda's national bird, we often say it should be the shoebill, but it's the stunning grey-crowned crane. And they are particularly common in Uganda, often seeing flocks and fields, many places en route, and absolutely stunning as a close-up shot. Then some in flight and often flying over, calling. They really are magnificent birds, these grey-crowned cranes. Of course, the African fish eagle, and they are particularly common in many of the lakes around Uganda. Absolutely wonderful, evocative call they have. That's the call of Africa, we often say. Beautiful fish eagle. One in flight, often swoop down to catch fish. You quite regularly see them hunting along the shores. They don't only take fish, they will actually take small birds and reptiles as well. Of course, here with the abundance of fish in the rivers and the lakes, they do mostly feed on fish. And then Goliath heron, the largest heron in the world, regular along this boat trip on the Nile. Absolutely stunning early morning light. And then northern carmine beaters are well represented in the north here. So Murchison is one of the best places to see them, and often flocks. Sometimes you'll see maybe 30 to 40 in a day on the north bank in Murchison Falls National Park. Red-throated bee-eater, also regular and common along the river in Murchison. Another stunning bee-eater, feeds on small insects along the riverside. And then the lapwings on the banks, regular are spur-winged lapwing, often in little groups. And again, well represented by reptiles, including this huge Nile crocodile. We regularly see some very impressive specimens along the boat trip on the Nile. There's another huge one basking on a sunny day. And then antelope, also particularly well represented. Cob, very impressive male, big horns. And they have lecking grounds where the males actually display, attracting females on the north bank. And you see good numbers of these cob through the day on our north bank trip. Here's an unusual photo Adam managed to get of a cob with an albino youngster that came out white, very striking. And the Orobi antelope, and amazingly common there. Elsewhere in southern Africa, they're really quite scarce. But here you can literally see 50 to 100 in a day, really quite common. So what we do is we cruise down the river for a few hours on the Nile, and then our vehicle drives around, meets us on the north bank. So we get off, climb on the vehicle, and you're now in completely different open, dry savanna. And these Orobi become particularly common there. Also Congoni, another impressive larger antelope on the plains on the north bank. And now you can start to get a feel for the habitat with these huge acacia trees dotted with giraffe and open savanna, lovely open grasslands. Another shot of the giraffe close up. They're very impressive, and we regularly see herds of them wandering over the plains. You can see the large palm tree in the background. These Borassus palms are also spread out across the plain. It's an amazing game drive across the north. So you see a lot of mammals, but also some fantastic birds as well. And olive baboons, regular there too, and sometimes in quite large troops. Pitta's monkey, which is one of the most terrestrial monkeys. They spend a lot of time on the ground. Here the grass is long and they're surveying the surroundings, but they feed mostly on the ground. You see them walking in sometimes also quite large troops. Again, the habitat here, you can see fantastic, vast, open plains, the real savannas of Africa. Pitta's monkey close up. And then the birds, again, magnificent raptors here too. Things like Ayers hawk eagle. This is quite a rare one, but usually on the trip we encounter them at some point, and flying sometimes over the the forested areas along the river. The magnificent Battalier. It's an amazing bird with its short tail, very striking and evident, both adults and juveniles. Usually that's an extensive park, over 4,000 square kilometers, so magnificent area, the largest park in Uganda, Murchison Falls, and Battalier in particular are common here. Also this one, if you're lucky, Bowdoin snake eagle, very impressive. Beautiful bird, but quite scarce. We would be lucky to see this. We probably only set probably 50% of the trips. Yeah, it's quite a scarce raptor. Then Denham's bustard. Africa is known for its bustards, and in particular Denham's on the north bank's a good place to see them, striding through the grasslands, catching mostly locusts and grasshoppers. Hughlins Franklin, or spurfowl as it's now been, the name's changed, and you can see they have these distinctive spurs. So the spurfowl are the larger group of game birds, whereas the Franklins are the smaller. So it's just a more distinctive name, represents the birds better. And yeah, they're quite common on the north bank. Also this black-headed lapwing, pretty much the only place in Uganda we see them is on the north bank of the Nile. And again, stunning bird. Good numbers, maybe 30, 40 in a day. Yeah, it's an excellent place to see it. Then Taroko, as I mentioned and showed you the great blue Taroko earlier. Now this is white crested, a little bit smaller, but no less striking. In flight, they have these crimson wings. And here he's in a fig tree feasting on the fruit. And then rollers, a family I haven't mentioned yet, but Abyssinian roller with this beautiful long tail, absolutely exquisite. And they are quite often in the north, especially if it's dry, then you see many of them. Another one in flight. And then at dusk, if we're very lucky, driving the roads, we do a little bit of a night drive or an evening drive around dusk. We may get lucky to see this incredible bird, probably in the top 50 birds in Africa. It's just absolutely spectacular, and that's the standard wing nightjar. You can see these strange standards which come off the wing and this incredible sort of spatula-like tail. Big feathers here. And the males display usually just before it's getting dark, flying around, and it looks like two other birds mobbing a bird. So it's quite clever. It sort of confuses any predators. But absolutely spectacular, standard wing nightjar. Then back to the barbets and the fig trees, white-headed barbet, unusual color combination, and a good place to see that. Then this great bird, the Abyssinian ground hornbill, with a blue facial skin. There's only 2 species of ground hornbill in Africa, and this is the northern one, the Abyssinian, which has this blue eye-ring, and the southern, which you get in southern Africa, is all red. And also Murchison Falls is one of the best places to see it. Often groups of 3 or 4 walking together, striding through the grasslands. And you can see that bill is incredible, dagger-like bill, and they catch all sorts of things from small mice to birds to nestlings to frogs to locusts. So quite a varied diet. Silverbird, which is a type of flycatcher, but absolutely stunning with this orange front and grey back. Unusual color combination again, but exquisite and regular on the north bank of the Nile. White-crested helmet shrike, often occurring in little groups of 8 or 10 together. The spectacular African paradise flycatcher. This is a male of the white morph. Often you get rufous forms as well. But in Uganda, in the savannas, we quite often see these beautiful white morph males with an incredibly long tail. Red cheek cordon bleu. It's a really striking little seed eater with that red cheek spot and that sort of turquoisey blue front. And then a strange corvid, the piak. This is the juvenile with a pinkish bill, And they have this strange long tail, the corvids in the crow family. And you can see here some riding on a buffalo, an African buffalo. There's a juvenile in the middle with a pink bill, adult with a dark bill. And they actually hitch a ride because the buffalo will flush insects as he walks. And if anything flies out, they'll swoop down and catch it, mostly grasshoppers and smaller insects. Yeah, some again on an African elephant. So they use these prominent patches to, quite clever how they have this association with mammals to flush prey up for them. Stunning northern red bishop, wow. So it has a completely orange tail, very striking and evident in the north. And then if you're very lucky, you get to see crested porcupine. Usually it's a nocturnal mammal, but sometimes early morning, late afternoon, they'll come out. And this was again on the north bank in Murchison. Also wonderful reptiles, the huge African rock python. We don't see them very often, but occasionally they cross the roads. Okay, so then from Murchison, which is up in the north, the most northern part that we visit on the tour, we come back south and back to Masindi for a night. And then you can see Lake Albert to the west of Masindi. So we will start to head southwest. This is a beautiful northern white-faced owl, which we sometimes see around Masindi itself. A stunning little owl, as well as red-headed lovebird, tiny little parrot, probably no bigger than your hand. And Masindi area is a good place to see this one. Really stunning. Okay, so from Masindi, we head to Kibali Forest, famous for the chimpanzees. And here we actually do the chimpanzee trekking. So excellent chances, if we haven't already seen chimps, to see them here in the forest, often like this one, lying up in a big fig tree, looking for food or just relaxing in the morning. And at the same time, while we're trekking through this beautiful forest to look for chimps, we will also keep an ear out for one of the secretive jewels of the forest here, and one of the rarest birds in Africa, the green-breasted Pitta. Now, I was particularly fortunate this trip for one to sit out. They don't always perch right out in the open like this, but on all 4 of our tours last year, we saw this bird. So we have a very good strike rate of seeing it, and secretive, but you go out very early in the morning and usually you hear them calling, and after a while you track through the forest, through the leaf litter, and you hear a bit of scuttle or you see something move, and then this jewel appears. So we have a very good success rate on seeing this magnificent bird, the green-breasted Pitta. If we're lucky, we also have a chance to see a Vambo Sparrowhawk, which is a rare accipiter throughout its range. It occurs widely across the continent, but is nowhere common. And I've seen it a few times around Kibali Forest. This is a nice adult just perched by the lodge. And then also fantastic for other primates, the red colobus monkeys. So Kibali itself has just 11 species of primate, incredible diversity there. Also beautiful lahoosts, stunning animal. Also quite terrestrial, you often see them on the ground or low down at eye level. Quite shy, but we have excellent chances to see them both in Kibali and again up towards Rhodesia. And then if you're incredibly lucky, this is the only time in my life I've seen a pangolin, and this is the tree pangolin. They're very, very tough animals to find anywhere, unless they're radio tracked or radio collared, then you might have a chance. But to see one, come across one in the wild like this, it's kind of once in a lifetime. And in the last trip, we were so lucky one crossed the road. This is a tree pangolin, which is usually nocturnal, but late afternoon, this one came out, and yeah, we were just blown away. We must have spent half an hour with it. We were chasing rare birds, but at the same time, we couldn't ignore this fantastic pangolin. And here's another headshot of him. Tiny, fairly small, only perhaps 3 feet long, not very big, and low down, not afraid of us. But sadly also traded heavily across the world, so they've been persecuted in many areas. So you're very lucky to see one in the wild now. Whilst we were searching for better views of this pangolin, we were incredibly fortunate as we stopped in the right spot, because a flock of white-naped pigeons, which is a rare pigeon and always difficult to see, landed nearby. And I was with a friend who's seen over 9,000 species in the world, and he was desperate to see white-naped pigeon. So if we hadn't stopped to see the pangolin, we may never have seen the white-naped pigeon. So sometimes you just get lucky. And then on to another rare bird, the speckled-breasted woodpecker. And on the edge of Kibali Forest, there's a swamp called Bwindi Swamp. And the last morning we have in Kibali, so we have fabulous 2 nights there, a full day in the forest. And before leaving to go to Queen Elizabeth, we go in search of this special speckled-breasted woodpecker, which occurs in the Bwindi Swamp. And then back down through the map here, I'll follow you down to Hoima. There's Kibali. And then from Kibali, we head west. Here is Queen Elizabeth, quite close to the Lake George and Lake Edward. And there's the Kazinga Channel, which I'll show you in more detail shortly. So here's a wonderful view over the Kazinga Channel in Queen Elizabeth. And you have your breakfast and meals overlooking this fantastic channel. It's about a 40-kilometer channel between Lake George and Lake Edward. We do a wonderful boat trip on the Kazinga Channel. And here's a sunset over Lake Edward. Another one over Queen Elizabeth. Huge euphorbias in the foreground there, which are a bit like cactus. More views of incredible Queen Elizabeth. It's another huge park, 3,000 odd square kilometers, so a vast area, and teeming with game. Huge herds of cob. You can see lovely savanna, African elephant, sometimes big herds, 20 or 30 in a herd. There's a little one. And then if you're very lucky, giant forest hogs, which are not common anywhere, but Queen Elizabeth is one of the better areas to see them. Very black and one of the largest pigs in the world. This in the foreground is warthog, with the giant forest hogs at the back, and they have very small tusks. The warthog can have really large tusks. African buffalo, well represented there too. And if you're lucky, leopard. Quite often we see leopard in Queen Elizabeth. It's one of the areas where because there's a lot of tourists, they've become accustomed to people and they're not so shy. Sometimes lazing in a tree like this or through the grass, peering at you. Magnificent. And spotted hyena, also there, not common, but quite often we see them on one of the game drives. And then around the flooded pans, this elusive heron, the dwarf bittern, sometimes lurks, and Queen Elizabeth's quite a good place to see it. And also these comical little chaps, the banded mongoose, often right around a wonderful lodge that we stay in, Moya Lodge, situated overlooking Lake Edward and the Kazinga Channel. And you get very close to them. They're incredibly confiding. You can see being photographed, and they'll wander up to you, quite inquisitive. And just a massive array of birds. This is now on the boat trip. We do a wonderful 2-hour boat trip on the Kazinga Channel. You can see gullible terns there in the middle, a lovely saddlebill stork here with a huge red and black bill, and great white pelicans behind, white-breasted cormorants in the foreground, lots of gulls and gullible terns behind, and hippopotamus here. It's just endless. On this 2-hour boat trip, you're likely to see about 80 species of birds. Here's just more white-breasted cormorants and flocks of great white pelican, sacred ibis. And then if good chances for African pitta African skimmer. And here, a nice flock, often hunting. You can see here's a lovely one with a lower long mandible, often hunting along the channel, skimming over the water, catching fish. And Hadada ibis, the lovely glossy sheen on the wing. Yellow-billed stork, just a huge array of this handsome bird. It is handsome, isn't it? The marabou stork, often not associated with handsome, but nonetheless an impressive bird, stands above waist high and often scavenges along the shoreline, catching sort of fish that the fishermen throw out, offal. Also, if the water levels are good, you may see flocks of flamingos. There's a nice flock of lesser flamingos. And this is one of the crater lakes in the park in Queen Elizabeth. White-backed vulture, fantastic bird, huge wingspan, and vultures are well represented. They've also been persecuted around the world, in particular in Asia, but the African vultures as well, mostly from poisoning. And we are lucky both in Queen Elizabeth Park and Murchison, their numbers are still good, and you should see maybe 5 or 6 species of vulture. This is the white-backed. Then white-browed kukul, fantastic. He's common in the grasslands and is perched up on a euphorbia here. Common button quail, rather secretive in the grass thickets, but Queen Elizabeth's a good place to see it. And another shot of an elusive crake, African crake, but very good chances to see this bird in Queen Elizabeth National Park in particular. In fact, in one section of road, virtually every trip we see this bird early morning. Otherwise, a difficult bird to find, African crake. And again, Kingfisher is well represented, the stunning grey-headed Kingfisher, just magnificent colors. Black-headed gonolek, also very common in the park. You may see up to a dozen in a day. They're really common or more in the thickets, but quite confiding, this species. Marsh tragger, this is another rather elusive one in the long grasses, but again, very good chances to see it in Queen Elizabeth National Park. Velo's black weaver, they're nesting around the thickets where there's a bit of water, very striking with a yellow iris. Northern brown-throated weaver, also on the edges, often nesting in the papyrus swamps. Red-chested sunbird, particularly associated with Lake Victoria, all along the edge of the lake in the swamps. There's this nice long central tail feather, just another stunning species. And then back to the eagle. So we saw the crowned eagle earlier. This is now magnificent adult martial eagle. Also very impressive, huge wingspan, over 2-meter wingspan. And they're mostly hunting game birds, francolins and guinea fowl. And good chances to see it in Queen Elizabeth as well as Murchison. Reptiles, the little triagama, blue-headed triagama, beautiful colors, well represented, both the triagama and the rockagama in Uganda. Good photographic opportunities, exquisite colors. So from Queen Elizabeth, down here near Lake George, we will head further south to the southwest. And this is an incredibly rich area around Bwindi. It's quite famous, of course, for its tree climbing lines en route. We travel through Ishasha, the section of Queen Elizabeth on the way to Bwindi. And you have very good chances of finding these tree climbing lines. They climb trees a lot in this area, probably for several reasons. It's cooler up in the canopy. There's long grass where they live, so difficult to see prey, so they can survey their surroundings. Less insects and things to bite them up here in the canopy, but regularly we find them as a lovely male surveying the area. And then on the way to Bwindi, we see these vast tea plantations, and you can see the forest in the background. So this used to all be forest. A large section has already been cleared for tea, and very good quality tea they grow in Uganda. It's widely traded internationally. And you can see the stark line. That's the border of Bwindi National Park, the Bahoma area. And you can see all the subsistence farming on the left and the solid rainforest to the right. So we're so fortunate that this is now protected for the mountain gorillas. Here's some more shots just of the scenery and the surrounding areas. It's subsistence agriculture dotted with little houses. This used to be all rainforest, so very altered. And now to Bwindi and Bahoma in particular itself, magnificent vines, huge forest with these towering tree ferns, very lush, high rainfall. They get around 3.5 meters of rainfall a year here. Beautiful clear mountain streams, and of course the mountain gorillas. So we have 3 nights here, 1 full day for trekking mountain gorillas, which is optional, but most people really want to go and experience an hour with these incredible beasts. And it is a very, very special experience. One of the highlights, I think, or mammal highlights of my life was going to spend an hour with these incredible mammals. You can see the fingernails, very human-like. Yeah. And so cute, the little ones fooling around in the understory just after a rainstorm. This one's all wet and bedraggled. Big silverback sitting at the back, surveying, often looking a bit grumpy because the youngsters are fooling around. There's a youngster, his feet up. Another very impressive, huge male. And it is just a very, very special experience to spend an hour with these incredible mammals. So you have 1 day for trekking and then another day in the area for birding. Because the Albertine Rift, which is part of where Bwindi is, it has about 25 species of endemics, just restricted to this Albertine Rift. And so excellent birding at Bahoma, which is the lower section, and again at Rhodesia. So we get to have pretty much 4 full days in this incredibly avian-rich place. There's us birding along the trails at Bahoma with a local ranger. Fantastic forest. You can see it's really lush and rich and high diversity of forest species. So we will seek out these key endemics over the next 3 days in this Bahoma and Rhodesia. And then red-throated Alethi, stunning bird. That's one of the Albertine Rift endemics. Special just to this small area, very localized, but good chances to see it there. Another view from the top as you climb up Bahoma and scan over the back, vast forest. It still remains as well protected and managed for the mountain gorillas. And then this is a famous swamp, Mubwindi Swamp. We do a day's walk down to the swamp from Rhodesia in search of one of the rarest birds in Africa. In fact, at the moment, I think it's the only known site. There's a couple of spots in Uganda and again in the DRC, but the most accessible place is down here near the swamp to see this tiny little Grauer's Broadbill, which is a very special tiny bird, has a very insignificant call. So it's hard to pick up in the canopy, but the local guides actually watch them. They've been studying them for years now and usually find a territory where they are spending time. So we have good chances to see it. Usually June, July, and August is an excellent time to travel there. Lagden's bushshrike, another rare denizen of these forests, but quite often we see it down at Mubwindi Swamp and sometimes at Rhodesia. Bar-tailed trogon, we saw Narina earlier, now bar-tailed is up in the forests here. Another beautiful trogon, good chances to see it at Bahoma. This is a secretive little robin chat, Archer's ground robin, and he is rather elusive, but usually over the 2 days we're there, we get to see him. Beautiful, rich underparts, that orange underpart. And then this cute little guy, a red-faced woodland warbler, often fleeting around in the canopy, another Albertine Rift endemic. And then Ruanzoria palus, fantastic little bird, also restricted, the special for this area. Doherty's bushrike, I haven't even really talked about the bushrikes, but it's another wonderful family. And this bird's exquisite, often skulking in viney tangles. Beautiful purple-breasted sunbird. It's a special and quite rare Albertine Rift endemic in Uganda. Magnificent sort of purple patches on his shoulder, long, slender tail. And another magnificent sunbird. There are so many species of sunbird in Uganda, maybe 25, and they're just all spectacular, spectacular. Black-billed weaver, another elusive denizen of the forests around Buhoma. And then handsome franklin. This is a tricky Albertine Rift endemic. We see them often near the roadside. Good place along the ridgetop forests around Rhodesia. Okay, so then from the west here, we travel back east to Mabira, quite a long travel day, back to an area here towards Kampala, Lake Mburu National Park, which is another fabulous savanna and has a series of 4 large lakes surrounded by papyrus. This is the wonderful topi, one of the fastest antelope. Doesn't look that it can run fast, but it certainly can. And impala, which is the only park in Uganda where you see them in the south. So south of the equator here, impala, this is sort of the northern limit for them. It has 2 males having a tussle. And zebra, another place you only find them in Uganda is in Lake Mburu, and they're doing well there. Yellow-winged bat. There's also some wonderful bat species in Uganda. This one is very striking, these yellow wings and yellow facial pattern. And if you're lucky, at the right time of year, you can see the male pennant-winged nightjars, magnificent here, just caught a silhouette at dusk. But quite often around the lodges here in Lake Mburu, we get to see them. Stunning bird. And also the rare brown-chested lapwing. This must be the best site in the world to see it, is Lake Mburu. And the trips in June, July, August, good chances to see them. As well as a boat trip there. We do a short boat trip for an hour or so, early morning, and very good chances to see African finfoot. Quite a spectacular bird you see with these brilliant orange feet and waxy orange bill. That's the male. This is the female with a striking white eye stripe. Black-bellied bustard, another of the bustards, fairly common in the grasslands here. Bare-faced go-away bird in the family with Tarokos. You can see the same shape. Feeding on the fruit of the euphorbia. Yeah, quite common in Lake Mburu. As is Ross's Taroko, another stunning bird. This deep navy blue, and then again, when it flies, has a crimson wings. African scopsals at night. We can do some night drives around dusk, and we quite often find African scopsal, cute little owl about the size of your hand, tiny little bird. And in the swamps on the edge, this is one of the secretive gems there, is Papyrus gonolek with a lovely yellow crown and the white wing bar. One of the special papyrus specials we look for there. Red-faced barbet, another incredibly localized bird, only found here and across in Rwanda, but good chances in Lake Mburu. And then these strange cattle with the huge horns. These are the Ancholy cattle. Amazing, huge horns, and often in herds of 50, 60. The local people farm them around the edge of the park. And then we offer a couple of extensions, in particular for the fox's weaver, which is this strange weaver with this huge bill. It's the only endemic bird to Uganda. And recently they found some good sites which are a little bit off the beaten track. So we do an extension in search of that, as well as this Caramoja rapalis. Here you can see in a whistling thorn with that striking white wing bar. And he's just caught a little caterpillar. Also a very localized, tricky bird to see anywhere, but they both occur in the same area. So good chances for both those species on an extension. And that's the end. Thanks very much, everyone, for joining me.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. David, thank you so much. That was very special indeed. Yeah, real trip down memory lane for me as well. I think it was about 8 years ago that I was last in Uganda. It was quite special seeing a bit of that again. And you really touched on a lot of the key areas and the key birds. You almost forget just how many specials Uganda has. The volumes of birds is just extraordinary. But yeah, we've had a lot of nice comments that have come through here as well, and a few questions as well.
Wow, David, I absolutely agree with you, Keith. You know, having a look at these pictures are just fantastic and truly beautiful to see, and thank you. But just from our side, I can see why Uganda tour client complimented you, David, by saying it is with a mixture of gratitude, wonder, and definitely humbleness, having been shown these birds by someone so awesome, that I say thank you again. It was so much fun for me. I was elated and still am when I think about Uganda. As they say, it was priceless. Really awesome. And Keith, before you go into Q&A, and there are a lot of amazing questions, we just wanted to let you know that next week we are back to exploring the incredible realm of Antarctica. A few weeks ago, we were enthralled as Adam Wallen took us on a memorable Antarctica adventure with visits to the Falkland and South Georgia Islands along the way. This time round, it is the turn of David Tangwai, our guest speaker from Quark Expeditions, who will dive into the nuts and bolts of an Antarctica cruise expedition. We have partnered with Quark for this very special Antarctica charter that's taking place in November 2021, and a whole range of other exciting polar expeditions as well. So next week's webinar will be a fantastic opportunity to learn more about the vessel we will be using on the charter, the zodiacs, how things generally work on landings and on board, the logistics involved, and so much more. Antarctica is certainly a special part of the world, and for those considering joining a cruise to this incredible continent, this is sure to be an interesting and valuable presentation. But yeah, enough of me. Keith, Q&A, all yours.
Great, thanks for that, Nikki. Yeah, no, that Antarctica one is sure to be very interesting next week with David. She's going to touch on a lot of different sort of items as well. But yeah, onto Q&A. We've had a lot. I just simply cannot go through all of these thank you messages. There's just thanks so much everybody for sending those in. Yeah, David, you've clearly got a massive fan base out there, and a number of people that have clearly traveled with you to Uganda as well, who are sending in their thanks. But yeah, people just wowed by the images on the whole, and folks wanting to know as well, you know, did you shoot all of those images yourself? I mean, I know a huge chunk were, and also what camera are you using, David?
Thanks, Keith. Yeah, I've been very fortunate to do many trips there with a number of my colleagues. So they're certainly not all my photos, and thanks very much to my colleagues, both yourself, Keith, and Glenn Valentine, as well as Raina Summers, some of Kieran Rush's, Adams certainly put in a lot of photos. And so, yeah, it's from all the guides in Rockjumper, and thanks very much, guys, for sharing your photos with me for this talk. The camera I've been using is a Canon 7D. It's quite a popular one. The Mark II, I think it's a slightly better range, but with a 300 fixed lens. And that is not ideal, to be honest, for birds. It's a little bit short, but fortunately with time, I've done these 17 tours. I've had the opportunity to get close to many things over that time, and therefore I've managed to get some close-up shots. Generally, 300 is considered a little bit short. You're looking for more like 500 to 600 to get great bird photos. However, carrying a camera around that has a lens that big is not easy. So most people are opting for the 1 to 400 zoom, which is fantastic at the moment. Gives you that little extra range. But yeah, if you're fortunate to get close, and fortunately the birds are fairly confiding in Uganda, so even a 300 works.
Yeah, absolutely concur with that. Birds are certainly confiding in Uganda, and so the animals as well. Actually, it's I guess the photos do show that to some degree. Yeah, that's great. And then just speaking about, I mean, volumes of birds obviously huge in Uganda, but what time of the year do you recommend going to go for the most species, essentially, Dave?
That's a good question. Thanks, Keith. Yeah, so there are 2 seasons for Uganda, and that's another reason why it's incredible. So you can go in June, July, and August, which is very good to see green-breasted Pitta and Grauer's Broadbill, those 2 mega birds. And that's the best time to see those 2 birds. And you're looking at around between 500 and 550 species on a 3-week trip. If you go in January, February, March, which is the other season, and not so visited, mostly because at that time of year, to see the Pitta and the Broadbill, you have to be incredibly lucky. They're very elusive for some reason in January, February, and March. However, you will see a lot of birds, including the migrants, which are there then. And then you can see around 590 to 600 species. So incredible diversity with the migrants. But those 2 key birds, the Broadbill and Pitta, you're unlikely to see in January, February, March. However, all the other resident birds, including the Shoebill, excellent chances throughout those 6 months.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just a couple of questions about some of the others. I know you did touch on the fox's weaver and that extension. George was actually just asking about that particular endemic. And I know you went out there quite recently, Dave, to go and actually see that species, and obviously got Karamoja as well. So we have touched on that, but Andres is asking also about Simliki and the options down in the Simliki area.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. Yeah, I think 1 trip to Uganda, to be honest, is not enough. I've done 17 trips and it's not enough. I can do another 17. It's incredible. And every trip virtually, I'm getting laughs. It's that kind of destination. And Simliki is one of these hotspots. So the reason we don't do Simliki generally on a standard tour is most of those birds are widespread in West Africa on other tours. However, they do reach their eastern limit down there in Simliki. So it's incredible birding. I've spent much time there for the general birds, but there are some rare specials which you kind of don't see elsewhere, including things like grey ground thrush, Grant's bluebill. Recently, golden-naped weaver was found there, which was thought to be a Congo endemic. And even camera traps have found a carpy. So it's an amazing place. It's a real gem. And there's good guest houses in Fort Portal where you can stay. And it's just an hour's drive on a good road to get to the trailhead. So you don't have to stay down in Simliki anymore. You can stay up in the hills where it's a nice climate. And then you drop down into the lowlands, spend the full day there and come out again. And it's a very rich area. 6 species of hornbills you can see in the day, including the huge yellow-cast and black-cast wattled hornbills. It's an amazing spot. Yeah, it really is.
Absolutely. It certainly is. Richard's just asking, and somebody actually mentioned it earlier on as well, but just asking about the physical sort of aspect of Uganda? How physically demanding is the tour on a whole? And I guess then related through to gorillas as well, and gorilla trekking, how physically demanding is that
yes, thank you.
Of the tour as well?
Yes, I hadn't mentioned, and it's a good question. Generally, it's very moderate, just a moderate level of fitness. Most of the trails are fairly flat, easy walking, like I showed you, Royal Mile, open. Even the trails at Buhoma, not particularly steep. There may be a few small steep sections, but they're really quite short and small. And we take them slowly because there's so much to see, both birds and mammals. So nothing is done really fast-paced. And it's at your leisure. However, with the gorilla trekking, it's a little bit different. It can be easy. You know, some people find their troop 20 minutes from the lodge, and they spend an hour there, and they're back before lunch. But some days the gorillas move. Obviously, it's not a zoo; it's a wild place, and they can be some distance, and you can trek all day and see them late in the afternoon. And then the trails, you're going off trails, so the guides will take you and they lead you through. They're very good. They have incredible porters to support you all the way. You can actually hire a porter just to help you on the trails, as well as carrying your bag and extra water. But you take a packed lunch for that day. And they're also good, you know, they will try and look at your level of fitness and try and place you in a group that meets your level of fitness. So if you like Keith and you're a spring chicken and you can run over mountains, then they'll send you over the mountains. But no, generally they're very good like that now, and they try to put you with a group that's equal to your task. Yeah.
Excellent, Dave. So yeah, just touching on that, I mean, obviously, yeah, with the physical side of things, we spend a bit of time in the vehicles as well, quite a bit of time, especially in the national parks, driving around. And Suzanne's just asking here, because we do travel by van, especially on safari, do we use an open vehicle, one where the roof, you know, pops up, or is it just a regular van where we're looking through windows?
So another excellent question. Yeah, so we use generally Land Cruisers. Each person has their own seat, window side. So 6 seats in the back with a guide and a driver up front. It's a pop-up open top roof. So in the safari parks like Murchison, Queen Elizabeth, Lake Mburu, you can stand up, have a good look around, excellent for photographic opportunities. So you all have window seats, very comfortable. There's space in the back for luggage. It's a little bit tight, so that's why we do recommend to keep the luggage to 20 kilos. But yeah, the bags fit in the back, and then there's a space around you for your hand luggage. But fantastic vehicles. You need 4x4 for some of the roads. If it's been rain, it's quite clay soils, so it's slippery. So we do use these Land Cruiser 4x4s, which are well suited to all the terrains we travel through.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a very key point. I mean, it's a really good question, Suzanne, and yeah, well answered there, David. But yeah, I think vehicles are really key. I mean, we pick those vehicles and make sure we've got excellent vehicles for the trip. It's a big part of the experience. So yeah, just touching on frequency as well of some of the species. Obviously, big highlights are things like gorillas and shoebill. And folks just asking, do we see species like gorillas and shoebill on all of our trips? Are they a regular sighting, or is there a best time of the year as well for those species?
No, on pretty much all the trips. I'd never like to say 100% guaranteed, but we have done over 50 tours, and we've seen gorillas and shoebill on all of those 50 tours. So you have an excellent chance really to see them. And the shoebill in particular, there's 7 different sites. We've seen them through the route. So we're always checking. If we don't see it at the first, you'll have more opportunities. And like I see, we have seen it on all 50 trips, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Nothing like having backups, eh?
That's it.
Especially for those big birds, yeah.
Yeah.
And then also just around timing of the year as well. What's the best time do you feel for butterflies? Deborah was just amazed by some of the butterflies that you got photos of. So is there a best time of the year for the butterflies as well? And then also the mammals as well. Is there a best time of the year to view mammals in Uganda?
I think, yeah, that's an interesting question. I haven't had that one before, but I think the slightly drier season, so June, July, August, actually better for the butterflies. There's more sun. January, February, March, a little bit more rain. So the butterflies are far more active when there's a bit more sun. And I've noticed, certainly if I think about it now, those June, July, August trips, you will see more activity with butterflies. Yeah, certainly. Sorry, the second question? Is there another question?
The second question was just the timing on mammals. Is there a better time of year to see mammals on the whole in Uganda?
Yeah, I don't think so. June, July, August, and January, February, March, very good for mammals throughout those 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree. Pretty solid on the whole. Dale's just asking as well, is it easy to double up with a trip to Rwanda?
Yes, that's a good question. It's a nice tag on. You know, often folks are traveling a long way to get there, and Rwanda is just an hour's flight away. You can fly from Entebbe to Kigali, and yeah, and then do a couple of days in Nyungwe Forest, which is also part of the Albertine Rift and has all these Albertine Rift endemics, and some of them are easier to see in Rwanda, like the purple-breasted sunbird. So yes, it's an easy add-on extension and a nice one to do, with more chances. If you'd like to do more guerrilla trekking, you can also do that in Rwanda. So very nice add-on.
Excellent. And then just a few questions around the field guide. What's the best field guide for the region there, Dave? I know offhand because I was chatting to Nigel Redmond quite recently, but I think the Birds of East Africa is going to be, or the latest edition is going to be out potentially for the end of the year. So that could be quite interesting.
That's very exciting. Yeah, Nigel was saying that's pretty much going to press, I think. So yeah, that's awesome. And I mean, it's already a fantastic guide, covers the whole of the region. So you've got most of Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, and Rwanda in there. And with the updated information, that's the book to have. So definitely can highly recommend that one.
Yeah, fantastic. That's going to be excellent when Stevenson's book comes out. I'm sure there's a few authors on that one potentially, but I don't know. So don't hold me to it. Another question here. Gordon's asking, is Rockjumper going to begin trips into the DRC at any time? Congo, peafowl, and other endemics. Should we
sign me up? I'm first. I'm first.
I'm second. Yes.
we all love to do a trip like that, and we have started investigating to see how feasible it is. Yeah, it's rather an extreme trip right now. It's not an easy trip by any means, but it is possible. Yes. So it's something we look at. Certainly, yeah.
No, I think you did right, David. It's certainly, it's been one on our radar. It's one that, well, we've chatted about for 15 years together and dreamt and talked about the names. And yeah, I know Adam's very keen as well, and a number of the other guys. But as you say, I mean, we sort of keep tabs on it and keep watching and looking. And we've got some contacts in there as well, and we keep monitoring things. But I can assure you, as soon as the DRC is ready and it is safe, and we feel we can do a good job out there, we'll get stuck in. That's for sure. We're all dead keen. Yeah. Dead keen. Mary's just asking, secretary birds. Do you ever see secretary birds in Uganda?
Yeah, I'd love to. No, they're very difficult on that route that I discussed, which is a 19-day trip. They're very, very hard. But some people do see them in Queen Elizabeth National Park and even Murchison. But for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, because the grasslands seem really suitable to them from our eyes, but obviously from the bird's eyes, not so much. But in Kideppo National Park, which is one I haven't mentioned, is in the far north, and is an incredible, also wilderness, a bit like Semliki. So you can do an extension there, and that's really good for secretary bird. You know, very good chances, like more than 80% chance to see it there, as well as probably the rarest barbet in Africa, the black-breasted barbet. And that's also the largest barbet in Africa, so it's a huge draw card. So Kideppo has, the last 5 years or so, has become very popular with tourists, both for mammals, huge herds of buffalo, cheetah there, but also incredible birding.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, someone actually did ask about Kideppo just briefly as one of the questions, but yeah, you have touched on it to some degree. Yeah, we're sort of coming to an end here. Simon's actually just popped through a question, well, not necessarily a question, but just a comment saying he went to the DRC last year and found it safe and welcoming, saw lowland gorillas. So I guess
Wow.
the area
Fantastic.
that he went to is was good. I know. That's for a lot of the birders, we want to get quite deep into the DRC and up into the whole mountains of the moon, and further up Ituri Forest and all that sort of thing. And yeah, I think that's a little bit more shaky and suspect. But thanks for that, Simon. I'm glad you.
Yeah, so the lowlands are good. The lowlands in DRC are good, and you can see lowland gorilla, you can see Congo peafowl, but the specials, which are the endemics, about 20 of them to the DRC are up in the mountains, and sadly at the moment that's not safe. You can go to Ituri Forest for a few birds, but there's only about 3 endemics there, and that borders Semliki on the other side. But the big forests of the Tombwe Mountains, which is probably where the most endemics are, it's very dangerous. You shouldn't travel there at all at the moment.
Thanks for that, Dave. So Nigel's just come on. Thanks, Nigel. I'm glad you're watching. He just said the 2nd edition of Stevenson and Fanshawe will be published in November. So there we have it, folks.
Fantastic. Can't wait.
Yeah, fantastic.
Get my copy.
Fantastic indeed. Paul's just asking here, what is the accommodation standards like on the whole?
Yeah, so generally very good. And from lodges to guest houses to hotels, we try to use the most suitable, good accommodation close to the general birding and mammal areas. So it does vary, but yes, and it's improved over the years. So really good quality accommodation throughout. Even the older colonial hotels have been well refurbished and in good condition. So yeah, it's a comfortable trip.
Yeah, it certainly is. So yeah, we're coming to the end here. There's more questions that we've got, but we are running out of time. We're quite a bit over the hour. There's only so much that we can get through. Thanks so much for sending through all of those questions, guys. So just one last one to finish, and I know you did touch on it briefly, David, as well, but Ronald was asking how many endemics in Uganda, and then just how many are possible on this trip, which is always an interesting one when it comes to Uganda because of, well, the low numbers, but how many you can really only see in the country. But
yes,
over to you, David.
Sure. So endemics, there's just the one, hey? That's the fox's weaver. But luckily, it hasn't been reliable for about 10 years. There were no regular sites, but just last year, they found a good spot for it. So we've seen it on the last 3 trips there. Very good chance for it now. I recommend for the fox's weaver a June trip because a little bit later, if there's a bit more rain, the area can flood and then it becomes inaccessible. So if you're particularly interested in seeing fox's weaver, you should go in June. Then Albertine Rift endemics, which are shared with Rwanda and a little bit into the Congo and Burundi and so on, are 25 species, of which you can see around 20 in Uganda, so a high percentage. Another few in Rwanda, and then some other sites, remote sites, a place called Imgahinga, is even further south than Bwindi in Uganda. Things like the Ruwenzori Taroko, you can see that there. So yeah, a good percentage of those Albertine Rift endemics you have an excellent chance of seeing on the trip.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. And from the Rockjumper team, all of us saying good evening or good afternoon or good morning. And we hope to see you next week. Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Thanks,
Bye
Keith.
all.
Thanks, Nikki. Bye.